Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your tea and coffee break and feel a little bit refreshed for our next session. Our next speaker is Tom Doctoroff, Senior Partner at global brand consultancy Profit. Now, Tom has 2 decades of experience building the brands of leading companies in Asia. He appears regularly on CNBC, NBC's The Today program, and Bloomberg, and has featured in publications such as the Financial Times to the Wall Street Journal. He's also the author of 3 best-selling books. His unique combination of pan-Asian career experience and in-depth understanding of the nuances of Chinese consumer psychology has made him one of the world's foremost experts on Asian commercial landscapes. So please put your hands together and welcome Tom to the stage.
Very nice to meet you. So in 45 minutes, we're going to have some sweeping generalizations about a culture of 5,000 years. So I ask your forbearance in advance. You can challenge me out in the hall over lunch. But this presentation actually is going to have 3 parts. One, I'm going to very briefly talk about the Profit Brand Relevance Index, why certain brands are ranking very high, but then really go a little bit deeper into understanding what you do need to do in China to bring a brand into alignment with a very different worldview. So we're going to go from very quantitative to actually very cultural in the course of this presentation, so please bear with me. So again, we just published Profit, a global brand consultancy, our brand relevance index. We do it in 4 markets: United States, UK, Germany, and China. And very briefly, we talked to in China in tier 1, 2, and 3 cities, 13,500 customers, covering more than 250 brands, both local and international. And this is very different index from what you normally see with the Brand Z, WPP's Brand Z, which really takes into account a lot of things like financial heft, monopolistic clout, scale on the ground in terms of talking about brand power and brand velocity. Here, what we're talking about is the consumer. We believe very deeply at Profit that 消费者洞察是非常重要的. Insight is fundamental. Insights explain fundamental motivations for behavior and preference. They answer the question why. And unless we can ask the question why no more, we don't know why brands touch the heart, why are brands beloved. So we go into hearts, not just into quantitative. And so there are different dimensions of why people like brands. One is customer obsession, as a brand in touch with how consumers live and work, their needs and desires. Ruthless pragmatism is another dimension of relevance. Does it make experiences simple and easy? Is it dependable, available, practical, and consistent? More higher order, distinctive innovate and inspiration. Is it motivating? Is the brand revolving around a clear, relevant purpose? And finally, is there pervasive innovation? Does it push the status quo? Does it offer novel solutions? And does it engage in creative new ways of thinking? These 4 dimensions are what we think make up relevance. And this is what makes up the Profit Brand Relevance Index. And just a little bit of quantitative legitimacy here. Relevance is very important both in terms of driving growth, and it's ultimately all about growth here, unleashing growth through the power of brands, but more importantly, profitable growth. You can see, and this is from US data, that the top 50 brands of the 50 top brands really result in higher profit and growth rates. So relevance equals growth and profit. So without further ado, who are the 50 BRI winners? Well, here they are. And you will see, we'll talk a little bit about why they come up to the top, which ones are leading and perhaps why, but you will see that almost half of these brands are technology brands. So they're really, technology anywhere in the world is liberating lifestyle, but technology for the Chinese consumer is releasing opportunity in new ways that nobody experienced 5 years ago. Right? And you would also take a look at some of the winners on the top 50, and you might get the impression that everything is new in China, that there are no rules, that everything is being written, that it is a brand new brandscape, regardless of what they're talking about: New Living, Alipay, WeChat, Meituan, Mobike, new traveling. Look, you'll see a lot of hotels that are up there: Airbnb, Disney, Visa, new entertaining, NetEase Cloud Music, Blizzard Games, Tencent Playing, Xbox. This is all saying these are brands that barely existed in the minds of consumers a decade ago. Are there any consistent trends and factors and forces and drivers in China? Well, we say the answer actually is yes, because China is built on fundamental cultural imperatives. And on top of those cultural imperatives, they get expressed in a modern way, in a connected way, but in a distinctly Chinese way. One thing that really stands out, however, is the incredible power of Alipay and WeChat, which come out a very strong #1 and #2. Now think about it. In the United States, are you ever going to have PayPal be #1? Impossible. But in China, Alipay, despite the fact that it is fundamentally transactional, due to its ubiquity and the fact that you're using it in creating a wallet-free society, liberating people transactionally, it gets a strong #1. And WeChat, the social media platform, gets a very strong #2. And you can see that across each one of these dimensions, they're scoring #1 and #2. In fact, Alipay gets #1 on 12 of the 14 dimensions that make up the 16 dimensions that make up the 4 pillars that we talked about before, in terms of customer obsession, pragmatism, inspiration, and innovation. So these brands are touching hearts and lives in ways that it's difficult for Westerners to understand the true liberation that they represent in terms of lifestyle. People might ask a question: well, what about local brands versus global brands? Given that #1 and #2 brands are strongly local brands, how are local brands doing? If you include Alipay and WeChat, it seems like it's a little bit neck and neck. Customer obsession and ruthless pragmatism, local brands win. And then when it comes to distinctive innovation and pervasively innovative, international brands win. But actually, if you take out Alipay, multinational brands still have an advantage in most cases over local brands. In fact, it's fair to say that in China, there is not one international brand that competes directly at the same price point of local brands, so international brands are still very capable of charging a price premium. So that's a little bit of data for you, but as I said before, insights are not observations. Observations record what people say or do. Insights answer the question, why? And for that, we really have to ask, what are the underlying cultural and business drivers in the PRC, in China? What makes the Chinese Chinese? Any brand, local or international, is going to have to bring itself into alignment with a very distinctive worldview. And what do I mean by worldview? I mean the relationship between individual and society that creates culture. And local brands, international brands all have to respect. Now, just for a little bit of warm-up here, I'm going to play Nike. Nike US. By the way, these are not television commercials. These are media-neutral filmic expressions. And by the way, I used to be in advertising, but now I can't say advertising anymore. I have to say that I'm an engineer of media-neutral, idea-centric participation platforms. Advertising used to be cool. In any case, take a look at American Just Do It. What is it all about? It's American individualism. When we say just do it, we're talking about having the courage and the individual power to buck against convention and release your own capability. Take a look. It's very...
Listen, if you can run a mile, run a race. You know what? Run a marathon. Outrun a movie star. If you can ride a bike, ride a backpack, ride a bull, ride a comfortable. Let's watch this. What kind of bull is that? your side. Hey, come on, man. That's not good. Oh, lesson learned. If you can play table tennis serve like that, beat the champ. Beat her mid-jewel. Come on, you got this. Come on. Beat Serena. If you can beat your friend one-on-one, beat him. Steal it. Take it. Sorry, girls. Now, take your talents to the streets. Beat the street court legend. Let's go. Beat that guy. Hold on. We can wait for this. That was nice. You like that?
Now bring this to China, where things need to be means to an end. The individual doesn't exist independent of his obligations and responsibilities. So it's not just do it, it's use sports. Just do it to use sports to help you move further in life. Take a look at it. 用运动. The spirit of Nike is here, but it is brought into alignment with a different culture and worldview. Sports as a means to an end. So, same brand, but different interpretations based on cultural imperatives. So, in order to bring things into alignment with a worldview, we need to understand that worldview. And this is where I'm really going to ask for your forgiveness. In 3 slides, I will try to describe what this Chinese worldview, and 我是外国人, OK, 我会讲普通话一点点, 但是这个是非常 dangerous, 有危险的. Now, if, however, I had to summarize, in my experience, the one unifying theme, no matter whether you talk about Moism, Taoism, Confucianism, that recurs again and again, it is that the only absolute bad is chaos, and the only absolute good is stability, 稳定性. Stability in China is the platform on which progress is constructed. And now I suppose I should apologize on behalf of the world for Donald Trump, but we won't go there. Just kidding around. But the fact is that stability is the platform on which progress is constructed. And regardless of what level of philosophy that we're talking about, stability, harmony, order is reinforced. So Taoism, for example, we know that Taoism has the Bagua. There are 8 different elements. 4 of them are masculine, 4 of them are feminine. They can be combined into only 64 different combinations, and everything moves in a cycle. And in order for an individual to be making progress, he needs to be in alignment with that Bagua, not resisting it. Just like water, you need to assume the shape of that which surrounds you in order to flow forward. So cosmological order is what Taoism is illustrating. And Confucianism is alive and well in China, despite the fact that many people can't define it that well. But Xi Jinping, of course, is talking more and more about it. But this is sociological order. There's something called the Wulun, the 5 key relationships that make up all ordered society, between father to son, husband to wife, older brother to younger brother, friend to friend, and ruler to ruled. And without whipping up a mathematical ladder, suffice it to say that the individual does not exist independent of those responsibilities and obligations to other persons. The individual is not the basic productive unit of society. But again, on sociological level, it is still about stability and order. And so, as a result of Confucianism, which has a tension at its heart, on one hand, it's very regimented. There's hierarchy, there's rules, there's procedures. But on the other hand, what most Westerners fail to remember about Confucianism is it is the first socially mobile social system. It is meritocratic. It is the world's first meritocratic social system. In order to climb up the hierarchy, however, you needed to internalize the rules of that hierarchy. You needed to advance by mastering convention, not bucking against tradition. Even right now, there are no Steve Jobs on the Chinese landscape. It is a different view of innovation and a different view of the value of rebellion. So there is a timeless tension, and this is the core unifying tension in China, that brands need to resolve in order to charge a price premium. And this tension is between projection of status, that's big, that's bold, 标新出地位. That's meritocratic, that's reaching for the stars. When we did the Pepsi tagline, translating it in 1999, the English version was ask for more. In Chinese, we didn't just say ask for more. We said 渴望无限, aspire to infinity. Right? And projecting your status. But also protection, because it's not a civil society in the sense that institutions have not been developed to protect economic and social interests. So this tension between projection, which is big and bold, and protection, which is much more safety-seeking, is really what consumers want resolved in their life as well. You can call it ambition versus regimentation. You can call it standing out to fit in. But this tension exists uniquely in Confucian cultures. Projection, you can see why. China accounts for now 45% of the world's luxury sales, despite the fact that the Chinese average per capita income is still only 20% of that in America. But luxury brands have a natural growth curve despite, the crackdown on corruption, because they are tools in life. They are tools on the battlefield of life. Red wine is booming in China, but only 3% of red wine, which is very status-oriented, is consumed inside the home. So this is something that is consumed outside when you are projecting your status as a new generation person. Even in terms of health and fitness, in order to get things going, it turns into a public event rather than something that's internalized, right? So it's not nearly as broadly penetrating the market because the benefit is internal in the West, and where it tends to be more external in China. Projection on a national level, of course, there's a very weak, strong link between national identity and personal identity, so that individuals get great pride at China's technological prowess in terms of its high-speed train. Projection. Common names are projective. We're all familiar how China names its kids. So you start with the family name, but then look at these given names: Kai, Shu, Jie, Sheikh, Sun, Cosmos, Power, Forward, Success. These are projections of hope into the future. Even addresses, apartment building names, they're projective. When I was 31 years old, I moved to Hong Kong. I've swept into middle age in Asia, but I moved into a building called Tycoon Court. And I guarantee you, I was not a tycoon at 31, and that building did not have a court. Buildings have projective names. In Shanghai alone, Peacock Dynasty, Central Residence, my very favorite, The Gathering of All Heroes Under Heaven, only in China. But protection is very different. It's fortune telling, it's phrenology, it's reading the future to manage your fate. You might not be able to fundamentally change it, but you will manage the fate in a protective way. It's something you only see in China, for example, is on the outside of 10th floor buildings, you have bars to protect from, I don't know what, Spider-Man gone bad. You have, of course, real fears about pollution that are there. And you also have fear of UV rays. It's a best-selling benefit for any skin cream in China, the sun that can damage. So protection is a different, more conservative impulse. You have, of course, the fact that there are omnipresent security cameras, and you know what? Chinese don't mind giving away data because they think that the government will use it in a way that is enlightened to help protect them and maintain stability. So Chinese are much more likely to surrender their data than in the United States. So We've talked about a master insight between projection and protection, between ambition and regimentation. And now we can translate that into 3 concrete rules of how marketing is done in China. There are 3 golden rules we consider of creating loved brands in China. And those are, number 1, maximization of public consumption. In order to charge a price premium, you have to maximize public consumption. Golden rule number 2 is the externalization of payoff. What I mean by this is benefits should not be internalized. Things just don't feel good. When you go to a spa, you don't go to just relax. You have to go to recharge your battery. So externalization of benefit. And number 3, reassurance. The fundamental role of brands in a society where institutions do not necessarily protect economic and social interests is to reassure both on social and physical level, but that doesn't mean that reassurance has to be boring. It can touch the heart. And they're not mutually exclusive. Take a look at WeChat, for example. It's doing all of these things very well. WeChat hits the trifecta. It has projection in terms of moments to make your mark, self-expression of liberation, that's projecting your status. Red envelopes war for social bonding, so the way that the red envelope wars are lubricating social networks, creating social currency is, again, a means to an end. It's helping you move forward in your social circle. And also, of course, the way that WeChat Pay is working with ironclad guarantee, that is very reassuring in terms of the ubiquity of it. That is all 3 of them together: reassurance, externalization, and public consumption. So let's first take a look at maximization of public consumption. These are status brands, and these are the brands that have a natural price premium because people are willing to pay a price premium for brands that are consumed in public, regardless of whether we're talking about high-end luxury brands and autos or we're talking about daily lifestyle luxury. Starbucks. Starbucks has performed in China the Houdini act of marketing. There are now 2,700 Starbucks stores in China, and guess what? The Chinese really don't like coffee that much. It's a land of tea drinkers. How did they do it? They did it by conforming to the public consumption imperative. They changed the business model. They made Howard Schultz in America has this 3rd space of private relaxation between home and work. Not in China. In China, the stores are bigger, the tables are longer, there are fewer single plush chairs. People go in there in groups to proclaim their affiliation with a new generation of elite. Their real estate strategy is focusing on high-end office buildings first and foremost in order to establish a brand. And even the way their pricing strategy works. Their coffee, which comes in a cup emblazoned with a Starbucks logo that you take around, is more expensive by 30% than in the United States. But sandwiches and meals which do not have branding are 50% less expensive. Right? So again, things that you can consume in public charge a price premium. IKEA, as recently as 10 years ago, the store in Shanghai, there were 2 stores in Shanghai, it had the highest footfall, but it had the lowest per customer turnover because the price-value equation was not optimized. People went there for design inspiration, but nobody was going to pay a lot of money for goods that are consumed in the house, even if it is it's delightful. So when they adjusted the price-value equation, when they made it clear that these goods are not going to be publicly consumed in most cases, but still a liberated lifestyle, then it became much more popular. So growth is now happening all across China in first-tier cities and second-tier cities, and this only started once they adjusted cost of goods because IKEA did not conform to the public consumption imperative. So what are our BRI consumption brands, the Brand Relevance Index brands? Well, you can see they fall into different clusters, all right? One is premium autos. So you can see BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and this is not unexpected because these are projections of a man's power, man or woman's power, excuse me. The top of the mountain, the top of the luxury pinnacle is all about demonstration to other people of connoisseurship and mastery. And this is used again to make sure that people below you know not to compete for your power. Take a look at this very typical Audi ad. It positions the man as the ultimate connoisseur, somebody who understands and can navigate with meticulous precision that journey to the top of the mountain.
别人看到你的今天，我们看到你的昨天。别人看到你的成就，我们看到你的奋斗。别人看到你的付出，我们看到你的收获。别人看到你的荣耀，我们看到你的执着。见证你的路，2011年型奥迪 A6L。
That is demonstration to others of connoisseurship. This is one of perhaps the most surprising findings, all right? And this is happening in tier 1, 2, and 3 cities. You've got a lot of hotels on there. And I guess it's not surprising when you think of what hotels actually are in a opening up economy. It's where you can stay to be prestigious, both in China and around the world, and also where to be seen, right? So they are reflections of your status, whether it be Marriott, Four Seasons, Shangri-La, Grand Hyatt, Park Hyatt. But they have different versions of status that they're trying to make their images with. Four Seasons, for example, is focusing on exclusive status by delivering exclusive experiences. When you go abroad, you have personalized tours that are brought to you by the Four Seasons. Shangri-La focuses a little bit more on a fusion of East and West, so it's a little bit more warm status, and the public areas are larger, and the decor is more comforting. And same with the restaurants, where, by the way, they're getting 40% of their revenue in China versus 20% in the United States. Or even W Hotel was a top brand in tier 3 cities, even because it represents an aspiration of trendy status. So hotels cluster up there because they reinforce identity and they are a place to be seen. Number 2, externalization of payoff. And again, what we mean by this is that benefits cannot be internalized. They are means to an end. They have to pull you forward in life. So take, for example, again, De Beers, diamonds, the role that they play in the West versus the role that they play in the East. The role of a marriage in Asia, in China, is different than it is in the West. When we say a diamond is forever, we mean romantic passion between two people that lasts a lifetime. Take a look at this, and when you show this ad to the Chinese, people laugh just a little bit. Pure.
Happy anniversary, honey.
Yeah, happy anniversary.
Yeah, there's something I gotta do.
Oh, yeah? What?
Okay. Well, I love this woman! I love her! I love her!
What are you doing? Stop.
Okay. Then I guess this will have to do.
Oh, my God. I love this man. I love him, I love him, I love him.
Now, in China, De Beers has created a new cultural imperative. Penetration for middle-class households for people getting married is around 90% in first-tier cities, 70% in second-tier cities, but it's not by celebrating eternal romance between two people. We know that a marriage in China is as much between two families as it is between two people. And when we say a diamond lasts forever, it's not about romantic passion, but the fusion of passion and something much more practical, commitment, 承诺. A 承诺 that lasts a lifetime. So take a look at how hard this poor guy is working to earn love. Running over hill and dale.
你牵动我整个世界，穿越海洋，踏上云间，舞到世界之巅。就在今天，我让时间冻结。我想说，有你的每一天才是永恒。 永恒印记
commitment that is
永远
demonstrated,
算是爱
means to an end, safety. And even SK2, which is a very leading brand everywhere in Asia, but take a look at what they've done with Tong Wei right here. Their idea is to change destiny. This is giving you the confidence not to accept your destiny, but to alter it. Again, brand as a means to an end.
每一分，每一秒，你都可以改写命运，因为命运它就在你手上。命运的好坏，不在运气，而在于你是否能够果敢选择。所以，不用介意别人的看法，相信自己的力量。
Confidence that will move you forward.
因为能够决定你人生的，就只有你自己。
Substance that shines.
改写命运 ，SK2。
Only in China are you going to have 5-year-old MBA courses because life is a battlefield and education is a weapon on the battlefield of life. So brands, in order to charge a premium, can't just stay there. They need to be active. They need to be a means to an end. And here are our BRI externalization brands, and all of these benefits have taken what could be internal benefits, feeling good, comforting me. In Europe, the leading shower gel talks about sensuous indulgence in the shower. In China, no. It talks about starting your day with an energizing kick. So, Volkswagen, the mass market car, right, ranks very high. And you can see what it's talking about here is driving you forward in life. Sorry, this is about investing in. I don't think I need to translate. Throwing yourself into 发现, into change. Volume, please. Into adventure, moving you along life. This is a car that is your partner on your journey forward to the middle class, investing in love. Investing in, fun and games. Investing in liberation. So middle class is not the same as the car on the top of the mountain that we saw in the status projection, which is really about demonstration of you as a character in control. Here, it's your partner moving you forward in life. Sports apparel, too, is not internalized benefits. We've already seen the difference between Adidas and Nike, East and West, but take a look at Adidas here. Here, we're talking about revealing a new you, somebody who masters the city, masters yourself through sports.
想用地心引力灭除马甲线，想用必杀技打败卡路里，想用脚步丈量每个城市，想见识一下自己都想不到的张钧甯。
Turning this all into social currency as well. International tourism. Again, this is an ability to present yourself as a citizen of the world, regardless of whether it's Visa, Airbnb, or Disney. You take a look at Visa, nothing great here in terms of their advertising, but what it's basically saying is this is something that is turning you into somebody with a broad worldview. 一个广大的世界观, and a broad worldview is a weapon as well, because in order for people to have a lot of toolkit of experiences to use as you navigate life's vicissitudes. So it's not just about enjoying the purity of New Zealand, it's about acquiring experiences as a citizen of the world. Gaming. 5 games on there. And what you're doing here is you are, again, translating this into social currency. Games are inherently social activities everywhere in the world, but particularly in China. So you're actually earning the right to be expanding your social circle in the virtual world. And by the way, the relationship that Chinese have with their virtual identities is very emotional compared to a relatively functional one in the West. This is just Riot Games. I don't want to explain all this, but this is a hugely successful broadcast event of competition of winners called Chase Your Legend. 400 million viewers around the country because it, again, is giving you social credibility and social currency. Third, Reassurance 2.0. Reassurance doesn't need to be boring, but this, by the way, is obviously very important where there are rampant safety concerns. We all know about the melamine scandal of several years ago, but this is only in China, where the leading soap for 30 years is Safeguard soap, which protects against germs. And this, by the way, can be cool. This is the ultra hot, ultra popular TF boys that are talking about how to wash your hand to protect germ infection. So again, only in safety-oriented PRC. But these are the Reassurance brands. And these brands tend to be dominated by local players who are not able yet to charge a price premium. Reassurance itself will not afford a price premium in most cases. But you have payment solutions. And Alipay, although it is beloved, it is not going to charge a price premium. But it is beloved because it is ubiquitous and it's part of everyday life. Union Pay, the same thing as you go out. It is ubiquitous for everything. And Alipay, as you know, it's expanding, not just in China, but around the world. There are 520 million users worldwide, and everything from the wet market all the way to abroad and all the way throughout Asia. E-commerce malls. These are endless choices, infinite bargains. But you know, the way that e-commerce works in China is different than it is in the West. In the West, 22 of the top 25 e-commerce sites are brand specific. Land's End, Crate and Barrel, they have their own e-commerce portal. Of course, Amazon is big and huge, but in China there are only 2 e-commerce sites that are not malls, right? And those are Suning and Guomei, the appliance manufacturers. But I mention this because it wasn't until safety of the large malls that have close relationships with the government that can, as much as possible, minimize any risk of counterfeit or rip-off. You know, that's when people start taking off in terms of e-commerce, when it became safe. And again, Reassurance does not need to be boring in the e-commerce malls. It's not just about infinite transparency. It can also morph into a mark of national pride. We all know that the Singles Day, 1111, which started off as retail therapy for the lovelorn, but is now a projection of Chinese consumer spending power. It is 4 times more than Black Friday. This year, they're probably expecting to go over about $25 billion to be sold in 24 hours. And this is basically saying China has a very strong American economy. Mass mobile phones, again, scale. They've achieved tremendous scale very quickly. Vivo, Xiaomi, Oppo. And what do they do, though? They're not just talking about reliability. They're all talking about looking good. The advertising is virtually indistinguishable, regardless if we're talking about Oppo, Vivo, or Xiaomi. It's making sure that you are airbrushed to heavenly perfection. But we're going to start a movement now. We're going to start a movement of authentic moments in China. That's our mission, capturing moments that matter. Consumer electronics, again, they're going from China to the world, and that's giving a little bit of national pride. You take a look at Huawei, for example. Huawei is using international celebrities both in Europe and in China, and it's basically saying, yes, we're big, we've got scale, but also we are China's first true international brand that was created in China, not just made in China. So scale can morph into national pride. So Reassurance, which usually comes from scale and omnipresence, does not need to be boring. So where are we at the end of all of this? Well, we have a white space. Broadly speaking, when you take a look at the top 50 brands, you have accessible mass brands that don't charge a price premium, that are getting by on reassurance values, even though they can be fun reassurance values, and those tend to be domestic manufacturers. And then you have mostly international brands that charge a high price premium, but don't have broad scale. They have margin, but they don't have scale. And the goal of both domestic brands and international brands should be to gradually fill in the white space. So local brands need to be focusing much more on elevating distinctive inspiration and pervasive innovation so that they can start charging a price premium and not just competing on operational resourcefulness and low price. There is also a huge opportunity for international brands to pull themselves down by doing what the local brands do so well, which is ruthless pragmatism, being where people need them all the time, anytime. And with that, there have to be 4 different things that they can do. 1 is to identify the white spaces of growth opportunity. 2 is to crystallize differentiating value propositions. 3 is to execute signature moves, a portfolio of signature moves inside the market so the strategy lands and people can feel it and the brands can be relevant in life. And finally, to define a relentlessly relevant brand purpose, which can be the North Star, the gravitational force, because Chinese believe that 团结就是力量. From unity comes strength, and that purpose needs to be a unified, aspirational, inspirational purpose. Again, it all comes back to understanding the consumer, understanding the fundamental motivations of our market target, looking into the heart, what's going to touch them, what's going to excite them, what's going to inspire them. And that requires, of course, respect for the Chinese consumer and the Chinese worldview. So, in conclusion, we talked about how there is a different worldview out there, a master tension between projection of status and protection of economic and social interest. One is bold, the other is much more conservative. But if we do have those 3 golden rules, we have 3. If we do resolve that tension, we can do that in 3 ways. Through maximization of public consumption, charging a price premium by maximizing public consumption, externalizing the payoff so the brand and the benefit is a means to an end, not an end in itself, and finally, delivering reassurance, but making sure that reassurance is something that can inspire as well. So let's get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We do actually have a few minutes for a few questions. If you'd like to take a seat, and we can see if we've got any questions from the audience. Has anyone got a question? We'll get a microphone to you. Could we get a mic just down the front here? Yeah, one's coming. If you can just introduce yourself and ask your questions, Tom.
Hey, morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for a very informative session. I was busy taking a lot of copious notes. I wanted to pick your mind on one particular thing that you mentioned in passing towards the end, which is that one particular thing that you mentioned in passing towards the end, which is that Chinese consumers tend to have a very emotional relation with their virtual identity as opposed to a functional relation that Western consumers have with their virtual identity. So where does this sort of insight come from, and how would you see it play out in a business space?
Well, we've done actually a study where we start comparing statements like, I have another identity online versus offline, or I can be myself in ways I never could online and offline. So questions like that. But what you really see it happening, how you see it happening is that the efforts that people do, marketers do to build their brands online tend to be very emotionally powerful. Because again, you have in China what I would consider repressed offline identities, because of the regimentation of society. And online, because you are protected by avatars and also by distance, you can really release yourself in ways that you can't in the offline world. And Western people, of course, there's that dynamic too, but it's not nearly as strong. So everything from shopping being all about pride commerce, not just about commerce, to being master and commander in the virtual gaming world is ultimately addressing the need for letting the dragon out in the heart, the dragon of the heart to come out, and you see it.
So essentially what you're saying is that the identity in...
Microphone? Oh, no.
Shall I?
Okay.
Essentially what you're saying is that in the Chinese context, the identity is more emotional
Oh, yes.
Which is not to say that the Western one isn't emotional.
It's
just
everything is a question of grays, you know, but the center of gravity is more emotional in China and it's relatively more functional in the West.
I'm sorry, I think we'll have to wrap it up there. A really short Q&A there, but thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
your insight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.